boardroom felt like a courtroom where I'd already been convicted. I watched my older brother Cole slide a glossy folder across the mahogany table, his smile sharp enough to cut glass. "As Dad's rightful heir," he announced to the assembled board members, "I'll be taking over as CEO effective immediately." The room erupted in polite applause while I sat frozen, staring at documents that had my father's signature but not my name. Not anywhere. Cole's eyes met mine for just a second, and I saw it. Victory, he thought he'd won. My mother sat beside him, silent as a statue, her gaze fixed on the table like she couldn't bear to look at me. That's when Mr. Delaney, our company accountant, cleared his throat nervously and said 5 words that would change everything. "We need to clarify something. Where are you watching from today? Drop your location in the comments below and hit that like and subscribe button if you've ever been underestimated by family. You'll definitely want to stick around for what happened next, because that phone call from the accountant revealed a secret my brother had been desperately hiding. My name is Ava Keaton, and I'm 28 years old. A week ago, I thought my family was my foundation. My father, Thomas Keaton, had built Keaton Construction from nothing into one of the most respected firms in the state. He died suddenly 3 weeks ago. Heart attack. No warning. One minute he was reviewing blueprints in his office, the next he was gone. The funeral was a blur of black suits and meaningless condolences. I cried until I had nothing left. My brother Cole stood beside me during the service, his hand on my shoulder like he actually cared. I should have known better. Cole had always been the golden child. Tall, charming, loud. The son Dad had groomed to take over since birth. I was the quiet one. The daughter who worked behind the scenes, helping with payroll, project bids, and design proposals. The one nobody noticed unless something went wrong. But Dad noticed me. I remembered the last night I saw him alive. His hand had trembled as he gripped mine and said, "Don't let anyone push you out of what's yours, Ava." I thought he meant my ideas, my contributions. I didn't realize he meant the entire company. The board meeting happened exactly 1 week after we buried Dad. I'd barely had time to process my grief before Cole called everyone together. "We need to ensure business continuity," he'd said over the phone, his voice professionally concerned. I showed up thinking we'd discuss transition plans, maybe split responsibilities. Cole had always handled client relations while I managed operations. It made sense to continue that way. But when I walked into that boardroom, I knew immediately something was wrong. The board members wouldn't meet my eyes. My mother sat in Dad's chair like she belonged there, her face carefully blank, and Cole stood at the head of the table with that folder, looking like a king at his coronation. "Thank you all for coming," he began smoothly. "As you know, Dad's passing was unexpected, but before he died, he made his wishes very clear." He opened the folder and pulled out official-looking documents. "These papers transfer full ownership and control of Keaton Construction to me, effective immediately." My stomach dropped. "Wait, what?" my voice cracked. "Dad never said that." Cole didn't even look at me. "He told me personally before he passed." His tone was dismissive, like I was an annoying child interrupting adult conversation. I looked around the table desperately. "This can't be right. I worked with Dad every single day. He would have told me." Nobody spoke. The silence was suffocating. Then I saw it, my mother's. Hands were clasped tightly in her lap, knuckles white. She knew. She'd known this was coming and hadn't warned me. "Mom," I said, my voice breaking. She finally looked up, her eyes wet but her jaw set. "Cole is ready for this responsibility, Ava. Your father made the right choice." The betrayal hit me like a physical blow. My own mother was sitting there watching my brother steal everything Dad had built, and she was helping him do it. "You're cutting me out," I whispered. "Completely." Cole leaned forward, his voice dripping with false sympathy. "Ava, you've always been better suited for quieter roles, supporting roles. This kind of leadership requires a different skill set." Translation: "You're not good enough." Before I could respond, Mr. Delaney cleared his throat. He was the company's accountant, a nervous man in his 50s who'd worked for Dad for 20 years. "Actually," he said quietly, his eyes darting between Cole and me, "we may need to review some things before finalizing anything." Cole's smile tightened. "No need, Delaney. Everything's been signed and verified." But Delaney didn't look convinced. He looked terrified, and that scared me more than anything else. The meeting ended with Cole shaking hands and accepting congratulations. I sat there like a ghost, invisible and irrelevant. When everyone filed out, I stayed behind, staring at Dad's portrait on the wall. His eyes seemed to follow me, sad and disappointed. Had he really chosen Cole over me? Had I been that wrong about everything? I drove home in a daze, barely remembering the route. My apartment felt empty and cold. I couldn't eat, couldn't sleep. Around midnight, I found myself going through Dad's things. He'd left boxes at my place months ago when his office was being renovated. I'd never gotten around to returning them. Inside one box was a folder labeled Succession Planning, aka my initials. My hands shook as I opened it. Inside was a document I didn't understand at first. Share transfer papers, dated 3 weeks before Dad died. My name was listed as the recipient of 52% of the company, majority ownership. But stamped across the top in red ink was one word, unfiled. I stared at it until my vision blurred. Why would Dad sign this but not file it? What happened? I couldn't sleep that night. I kept reading the document over and over, trying to make sense of it. Dad had clearly intended to give me majority control. The papers were signed, witnessed, dated, but something had stopped them from being officially processed. At 3 a.m, I remembered Mr. Delaney's face at that meeting. The way he'd looked at me with something like guilt, or fear, or both. I grabbed my phone and sent him a text. "We need to talk, it's urgent, please." I didn't expect a response until morning, but my phone rang 15 minutes later. "Ms. Keaton." His voice was barely above a whisper. "I shouldn't be calling you, but you need to know something." My heart pounded. "What?" He took a shaky breath. "Your father did file those share transfer papers before he died. You are the majority owner of Keaton Construction." The room spun around me. "Then why doesn't anyone know?" There was a long pause. "Because someone withdrew the documents 2 days after the funeral, before they could be officially registered." My blood ran cold. "Who?" Another pause, longer this time. "Your brother, but I have a copy of the original filing in my personal archive." I sat in shock for several minutes after Delana hung up. Cole had stolen my inheritance, not just taken it, actively stolen it by withdrawing legal documents that proved Dad wanted me to run the company. My brother, who I'd stood beside at the funeral, who'd hugged me while I cried, who'd promised we'd get through this together, he'd looked me in the eye and lied. "Send me everything," I'd told Delana before he hung up. "Every single document you have." He'd agreed, his voice still shaking. "But Miss Cutton, if your brother finds out I gave you these files, I'll lose my job or worse." I'd promised to protect him. Now I sat in my dark apartment, anger burning through the shock. Cole didn't just want the company. He wanted to erase me completely, to rewrite history so it looked like Dad had never trusted me at all. I thought about confronting him immediately, screaming, demanding answers, but something stopped me. If Cole had gone this far, he wouldn't give up easily. I needed to be smart, strategic. I needed to think like Dad had taught me. The quiet one, the one nobody noticed. That was about to become my greatest advantage. The next morning, I confronted my mother. I found her at the house I'd grown up in, the one she'd refused to leave after Dad died. She was in the kitchen, making coffee like it was just another Tuesday. "You knew about the shares," I said without preamble. She didn't even flinch, didn't pretend to be confused. "Your father changed his mind," she said quietly, not looking at me. "He realized Cole was ready and you weren't." I laughed. It was a harsh, bitter sound that didn't feel like it came from me. "Dad didn't change his mind, Mom. Cole stole legal documents and you helped him." Her hand trembled as she set down her coffee cup. "That's not what happened." I stepped closer. "Then explain it to me. Explain why Dad signed papers giving me 52% of the company 3 weeks before he died, and now Cole has everything." She finally met my eyes. Hers were red, exhausted. "Cole is all I have left, Ava. Your father is gone. I can't lose my son, too." The words hit me like a slap. "So you chose him, over me, over the truth, over what Dad actually wanted." She looked away. "I chose survival." I felt something inside me harden, something that had been soft and trusting my entire life. "Then I guess you just lost a daughter." I walked out before she could respond. Delana's email arrived at midnight. I opened it with shaking hands. Inside were scanned copies of the original share transfer documents, Dad's signature, the witness signatures, the filing date, everything official and legal and completely legitimate. There was also a scanned letter, handwritten. Dad's writing. My vision blurred with tears as I read it. "Ava, these shares represent your future. You've earned them through dedication, intelligence, and integrity. I trust you to lead this company with the same values I tried to instill. Don't let fear make you small. Don't let anyone convince you that you're not capable. You are more ready for this than you know. Lead with your heart. That's always been your strength. Love, Dad." I sobbed until my chest ached. All those years of feeling invisible, underestimated, overlooked. Dad had seen me. He'd trusted me with his entire legacy. and Cole had thrown that away like it meant nothing. I dried my eyes and stared at the documents glowing on my laptop screen. "You wanted a war, Cole," I whispered into the darkness. "You've got one," Cole called the next afternoon. His voice was cheerful, casual. "Family dinner tonight at Mom's, 7 sharp, don't be late." I almost said no, but curiosity won. I wanted to see him, to watch him pretend everything was fine while I knew the truth. I showed up exactly at 7 wearing my best poker face. Cole greeted me at the door with a hug that made my skin crawl. "There's my little sister," he said, all charm and warmth. Fake, so fake. Dinner was torture. Cole dominated the conversation, talking about his plans for the company, new contracts, expansion ideas, changes he wanted to implement. Mom smiled and nodded like he was a genius. I ate in. Silence, watching, studying. When dessert arrived, Cole raised his glass. "To the future of Cutton Construction," he announced, "and to family." Mom lifted her glass. I lifted mine slowly, meeting Cole's eyes. "Funny," I said quietly. "I thought Dad left the company to the next generation, not just you." His smile faltered for half a second, just half a second, but I saw it. "Still bitter, sis?" he asked lightly. I smiled back. Sweet, dangerous. "Not at all. Actually, I've been talking to Dad's accountant about some interesting paperwork." The color drained from his face. The wine glass trembled slightly in his hand. I stood up, setting my napkin on the table. "Enjoy your celebration, CEO, while it lasts." 2 days later, I was at the office filing some paperwork when I heard voices in the hallway. Cole's voice, low and sharp. I froze, pressing myself against the wall. "Make sure she doesn't have access to the internal archives," he was saying. His assistant's nervous voice responded. "She's been asking questions, digging into old files." Cole's voice turned cold. "Then bury everything deeper. I don't care how you do it. Just make sure she doesn't find anything that contradicts the official story." My hands clenched into fists, so he knew. He knew I was looking for evidence. When they moved away, I stepped into the hallway. Cole and his assistant went silent the second they saw me. "Don't stop on my account," I said, smiling coldly. "Just discussing business strategy, right?" Cole forced a laugh. "Exactly, morning staff coordination." His assistant wouldn't meet my eyes. I walked past them slowly, deliberately. "Carry on then, I'm sure you have lots to bury. I mean coordinate." Cole's jaw tightened, but he smiled, always smiling. As I walked away, I felt his eyes on my back. Fear, I'd seen it clearly. For the first time in our lives, my brother was afraid of me, and I was just getting started. I met with Dullina again that weekend. He'd chosen a quiet cafe on the edge of town, far from anywhere we might be recognized. He looked exhausted, older somehow. "Your father told me something before he died," Dullina said quietly, stirring his coffee without drinking it. "He said, if anything happens to me, make sure Ava gets what's rightfully hers. Cole can't be trusted with the company." I leaned forward. "Then why didn't you say anything at the board meeting?" His hands shook. "Because Cole showed me a document. A notarized letter claiming you'd voluntarily given up your shares. It had your signature and your mother's signature as witness." My stomach turned. "I never signed anything like that." Delaney nodded miserably. "I know that now. It was forged. Your brother is very good at making fake documents look official." He reached into his bag and pulled out a flash drive. "Everything's on here. The real share transfers, the fake letters, email trails showing Cole coordinating with a forger, phone records, bank transfers for payoffs." He pushed it across the table. "If he finds out I gave this to you, I'm finished. Fired at minimum, possibly worse." I closed my hand around the drive. "You won't be, I promise. When this is over, you'll have your job back and Cole will be gone." He looked at me with something like hope. "You really think you can beat him?" I thought of Dad's letter, his trust, his belief in me. "I don't think, I know." That night, I opened the flash drive and dove into the files. What I found was worse than I'd imagined. Cole hadn't just forged one document. He'd created an entire false paper trail. Fake emails from me saying I didn't want the responsibility of ownership. Forged board minutes showing me declining involvement in company decisions. Letters to Dad supposedly from me, asking him to give everything to Cole instead. Each document was carefully crafted to paint a picture of a Keaton, the daughter who didn't want the family business, who'd rather step aside and let her capable brother lead. It was a complete rewrite of history, of who I was. I thought about all those years working beside Dad, the late nights reviewing contracts, the weekends spent on construction sites, the ideas I'd contributed that had saved the company hundreds of thousands of dollars. Cole had taken all of it and erased it with lies, but he'd made one critical mistake. He'd been so focused on creating fake evidence against me that he'd left trails proving the documents were false. Metadata showing they'd been created after Dad died. Payment records to a document forger. Email threads discussing the AVA problem. I started a new document on my computer and titled it, Evidence Log. Then I began organizing everything methodically, carefully, the way Dad had taught me, one truth at a time. I needed more allies. The next morning, I called Thomas Ward, Dad's oldest business partner. He'd retired 2 years ago but still consulted occasionally. When I told him I wanted to meet, he invited me to his home office immediately. "Ava," he said warmly when I arrived. "I've been thinking about you. How are you holding up?" I didn't waste time on pleasantries. "Did Dad ever talk to you about succession planning?" His expression shifted, became guarded. "Why do you ask?" I showed him copies of the real share transfer documents, watched his face carefully. He went pale. "My God," he whispered. "Your father did tell me he was giving you majority control, but your mother called me after the funeral and said you'd changed your mind, that the pressure was too much and you decided to step back." My chest tightened. "She lied. I never said that. I never even knew about the shares until this week." Thomas set the papers down with shaking hands. "That means Cole." He couldn't finish the sentence. "Stole my inheritance," I finished for him, "with Mom's help." He stood up, packing. "This is fraud, serious fraud. If this goes public, it could destroy the company's reputation." I met his eyes steadily. "The company will survive, it always has, but Cole can't." Thomas studied me for a long moment. "You've changed. You're not the quiet girl who used to hide in her father's shadow anymore." I thought about everything I'd lost, everything Cole had taken. "That girl died in a boardroom last week. I'm what's left." He nodded slowly. "Then count me in, whatever you need, I'll testify if it comes to that." I changed my strategy, stopped arguing with Cole, stopped reacting to his smugness. When he bragged about new contracts at family dinners, I smiled and nodded. When he talked about his vision for the company, I congratulated him. He thought I'd given up, that I'd accepted my place. That was exactly what I needed him to think. One afternoon, he called me into his new corner office, Dad's old office. Seeing him behind Dad's desk made me want to scream, but I kept my face neutral. "I wanted to thank you," Cole said, leaning back in Dad's chair. "For being mature about all this. I know the transition was difficult for you." I forced a smile. "You were right. Leadership requires a different skill set. I'm better suited for supporting roles." He actually looked relieved. "I'm glad you see it that way. Makes everything easier." I stood to leave, then paused at the door. "Cole, yeah. Just remember, Dad always said the quiet ones are the dangerous ones. People underestimate them until it's too late." His smile faltered slightly. "What's that supposed to mean?" I shrugged innocently. "Nothing, just remembering his advice. Have a good day, brother." I walked out feeling his confused stare on my back. Let him wonder, let him worry. The trap was almost ready. Cole scheduled another board meeting 2 weeks later, his quarterly vision presentation. I attended quietly, sitting in the back row where nobody paid attention to me. He presented his plans with his usual confidence. New expansion into commercial development, aggressive bidding on government contracts, restructuring the company hierarchy. His numbers looked impressive at first glance, but I'd been studying the company's actual finances. Cole's projections were built on fantasy. He was burning through Dad's carefully managed reserves, taking risks that could bankrupt us within a year. When he finished his presentation, the board applauded politely. Then I raised my hand. Cole looked annoyed. "Yes, Ava." I kept my voice professional, curious rather than confrontational. "I have a question about the capital allocation for Project Skyline. Where exactly did those funds come from?" He blinked. "Private investors." "Which ones specifically? I'd love to see the investment agreements." Color crept up his neck. "That's confidential information." I tilted my head. "From the board, we're supposed to approve all major investments." Silence fell over the room. Cole stammered, "The documentation is being finalized." "So the money doesn't actually exist yet?" I asked innocently. His face flushed red. "That's not what I said." "Then what are you saying?" The board members were looking at him now with confusion and concern. He'd promised them secured funding that apparently didn't exist. That was the first real crack in his perfect facade, and everyone in that room had seen it. That night, Delaney called me in a panic. "Cole's moving money," he said, his voice shaking. "Large transfers to offshore accounts. If he drains the company, the liability could fall on you." My pulse spiked. "Why me?" "Because your name is still technically attached to some internal filings, historical documents from when you managed operations. Cole didn't remove them. He repurposed them to make it look like you're still involved in financial decisions. I wanted to scream. Cole wasn't just stealing. He was setting me up to take the fall if everything collapsed. How much time do we have? I asked. Delaney hesitated. Days, maybe a week. He's moving fast now. I made a decision. Then it's time to stop hiding. Send me everything you have on those transfers. Every account number, every transaction, everything. Ava, if we move too soon. We're out of time for strategy, I interrupted. It's time Cole learned I'm not the quiet one anymore. After I hung up, I sat in the darkness of my apartment. Dad's picture was on my desk. His eyes seemed to be watching me, trusting me. I whispered to it, I won't let him destroy what you built, Dad, I promise. Then I started planning the trap that would end this war. I sent Cole an email the next morning, professional, direct. Need to discuss operational concerns. My office tomorrow, 9 a.m. He showed up 20 minutes late, which was typical. He strolled in like he owned the building, which he thought he did. What's this about, Ava? He asked, not bothering to sit. I pressed play on my laptop. Cole's voice filled the room, audio from a recording Delaney had made. If she ever finds out about the real Will, I'll ruin Delaney. Make sure he never works again. Cole's face went white. Where did you get that? I smiled calmly. People talk, Cole, especially when they realize they're working for a fraud. He lunged toward my laptop. I pulled it back. I have copies, dozens of them, in multiple locations. His hands were shaking, actually shaking. You can't prove anything. That recording is illegal. Maybe, but it's interesting, isn't it? What you said about the real Will. Want to explain that to the board? He backed toward the door. You'll regret this, Ava. I'll destroy you. I stood up slowly. You already tried that. It didn't work. He slammed the door so hard the frame rattled. I sat back. Down, my own hands trembling now that he was gone. But I'd done it. I'd rattled him. Made him panic. Panicked people make mistakes. I was counting on it. 2 days later, everything exploded. A recording of Cole's rant appeared on social media. Not the one I'd played for him. A different one. Longer. Nastier. Him threatening Delaney, bragging about forging documents, laughing about how easy it was to manipulate the board. I hadn't leaked it. Someone inside the company had done it independently. Someone who wanted Cole gone. The video went viral. Local news picked it up. By noon, the company's phone lines were flooded. Clients calling with concerns, investors demanding explanations. The board held an emergency meeting. Cole was suspended pending investigation. That night, my phone rang. Cole's voice was raw, shaking. Did you do this? Did you leak that recording? I could have lied. Should have, maybe. But I wanted him to know the truth. No, Cole, I didn't leak anything. Then who? Maybe someone who's tired of watching you destroy Dad's legacy. Maybe someone who actually cares about this company. Or maybe you just pissed off so many people that someone finally decided to fight back. He was quiet for a long moment. This isn't over. Yes, I said softly. It is, you just don't know it yet. I hung up before he could respond. The war wasn't won, but the tide had turned, and Cole was drowning. Cole went on the offensive immediately. Within days, rumors started spreading. That I'd forged documents, that I'd manipulated Delaney, that I was mentally unstable, still grieving Dad and lashing out irrationally. Some people believed him. I could see it in how they looked at me at the office. Pity, doubt, suspicion. It hurt more than I wanted to admit. These were people I'd worked with for years, but gossip and lies were easier to believe than complicated truth. I wanted to defend myself, to shout the truth from the rooftops, but I forced myself to stay quiet, to wait, because I knew what was coming. The evidence Lydia Graham was compiling. Lydia was the corporate registrar, the woman who maintained all official company documents. Delaney had connected me with her weeks ago. She'd been quietly going through archives, pulling original filings, comparing signatures, building an unshakable case. Let him talk, I whispered to myself when the rumors got particularly vicious. The truth doesn't need to shout. I just had to hold on a little longer. Dad had taught me patience. Taught me that quiet persistence outlasted loud aggression every time. I was about to prove him right. The call came on a Tuesday afternoon. Lydia's voice was excited, triumphant. Ava, I found it, the original will, the real one. I almost dropped my phone. Where? In the archives, filed properly, witnessed correctly. Your name is clearly listed as majority owner of Keaton Construction. 52% of shares transferred 3 weeks before your father's death. My hands shook. And Cole's withdrawal of the documents. Also documented, he filed a falsified waiver supposedly signed by you using your mother's signature as witness. But the forensic analysis shows the signatures don't match your actual handwriting patterns. It's fraud, Ava, clear, provable fraud. I sat down before my legs gave out. Can you testify to this? Already prepared my official statement. I've also contacted the State Corporate Commission. This isn't just a family dispute anymore, it's criminal. For the first time in weeks, I let myself cry, not from sadness, from relief, from vindication. Thank you, I whispered. Thank you so much. Lydia's voice was gentle. Your father was a good man. He deserves to have his wishes. Honored. I hung up and sat in my car, sobbing until I had nothing left. Then I dried my eyes, fixed my makeup, and drove straight to my lawyer's office. It was time to finish this. My lawyer, Patricia Chen, reviewed everything with careful precision. The share transfer documents, the forged waivers, Lydia's testimony, bank records showing Cole's payments to a document forger. This is an incredibly strong case, she said after an hour of review. Ms. Keaton, legally speaking, you own this company. You always have. Those words should have felt triumphant. Instead, they just felt heavy. What happens now? Patricia laid out the process. File formal challenges to Cole's authority. Request an emergency board hearing. Present evidence to corporate regulators. Pursue criminal charges if necessary. It won't be pretty, she warned. Family legal battles rarely are. Are you prepared for how ugly this might get? I thought about Dad, about his trust in me, about everything Cole had stolen. I'm not doing this to hurt my family, I said quietly. I'm doing this to honor my father's wishes and protect the company he built. If that makes me the villain in their story, so be it. Patricia smiled. Then let's get started. You're about to get your life back. I left her office feeling stronger than I had in weeks. The scared, uncertain girl who'd sat in that boardroom watching her brother steal everything. She was gone. I'd become someone else. Someone Dad would have been proud of. Someone who finally understood what he meant by leading with integrity. I requested a meeting with Cole before the formal hearing. Neutral ground. Dad's old office at the construction site downtown. He arrived looking exhausted, defeated. You've been busy, he said bitterly, not bothering with pleasantries. I stayed standing, just finishing what Dad started. You really think you can run this company? He laughed without humor. You've always been the helper, Ava, the assistant. You don't have what it takes to lead. I'd heard those words so many times, from him. From people who underestimated me, they used to hurt. Now they just sounded pathetic. Dad thought I could. His opinion is the only one that matters. Cole's face twisted. He would have changed his mind. He always did. He would have realized I'm the one who should run things. Is that what you tell yourself? I asked quietly. That you're not stealing, just taking what you deserve? He stepped closer. You'll destroy this family. I held his gaze. You already did that. The day you decided Dad's final wishes meant less than your ego. He opened his mouth to argue, then closed it. For the first time, he had no response. No charm, no lies, just defeated silence. Goodbye, Cole, I said. I walked out, leaving him standing alone in our father's office. It was the last time I ever spoke to him. The corporate hearing was brutal. Cole's lawyers tried everything. Claimed the documents were forgeries. Accused Delaney of manipulation. Suggested I was unstable and vindictive. They threw every accusation, every lie, every desperate argument they could think of. But then Lydia took the stand. She presented her findings calmly, professionally. Original documents, forensic analysis, timeline of events. The evidence was overwhelming, undeniable. When she finished, she looked directly at the panel. The facts are clear. Ms. Ava Keaton is the legal majority owner of Keaton Construction. She has been since the day her father signed those transfer papers. Everything that's happened since has been an attempt to defraud her of her rightful inheritance. The room went silent. I didn't look at Cole. Didn't need to. The chairman of the panel cleared his throat. Based on the evidence presented, we find in favor of Ms. Keaton. Cole Keaton's authority as CEO is hereby terminated. Full ownership and control is restored to Ava Keaton, effective immediately. I sat very still, trying to process it. I'd won, actually won. Someone touched my shoulder. Patricia, my lawyer, was smiling. Congratulations, Ms. Keaton, you just got your company back. I excused myself and went to the bathroom where I cried until my ribs hurt. Not from sadness, from release, from the weight of months of fighting finally lifting. When I looked in the mirror, I barely recognized myself. The quiet, overlooked daughter was gone. Someone stronger stood in her place. Aftermath moved quickly. Cole was formally removed as CEO. Investors who'd backed him pulled their support. His reputation in the business community collapsed. Within a week, he'd cleared out his office and disappeared. I heard through mutual acquaintances that he'd moved to another state. I didn't care enough to confirm it. My mother called once. I let it go to voicemail. She left a long, rambling message about family loyalty and forgiveness, about how I was tearing apart everything Dad had built. I deleted it without responding. She'd made her choice, I'd made mine. The company was a mess, debt, chaos, employee distrust. Projects Cole had mismanaged or abandoned entirely, but it was mine to fix. I spent the first month just stabilizing things, meeting with every employee personally, reviewing every contract, rebuilding relationships with clients Cole had alienated. It was exhausting. Sometimes I worked 16-hour days, but slowly things started improving. People began trusting me. Projects got back on track. The name Keaton Construction started meaning something again. One evening, I stood alone in the boardroom, the same room where I'd been humiliated, where I'd watched Cole steal everything. Now it was mine, my company, my responsibility, my legacy. I looked up at Dad's portrait. "We did it," I whispered. "Just like you knew we would." For the first time since he died, the grief felt bearable. Because I was finally doing what he'd trusted me to do. Leading. Not from the shadows, but standing in the light he'd always believed I deserved. A year later, Keaton Construction was thriving. We'd paid off the debt Cole had accumulated, secured new contracts based on reputation and quality, expanded into sustainable building practices, something Dad had always wanted to explore. The business community respected our name again. Employees were proud to work here, and I'd become the leader I never knew I could be, not loud like Cole, not trying to be someone I wasn't, just myself, steady, strategic, honest. I kept Dad's office exactly as he'd left it, his awards on the walls, his blueprints on the desk, his coffee mug by the computer. Sometimes I'd sit in his chair and imagine him there offering advice or approval. Cole never came back. I'd heard he was working in sales somewhere, starting over. My mother sent Christmas cards I didn't open. My sisters reached out occasionally, uncomfortable messages that I responded to politely but distantly. I wasn't bitter anymore, just done. They'd made their choices, I'd moved on. Late one evening, I found Dad's old journal in his desk drawer. Inside was an entry from a few months before he died. "Ava understands what this company is really about, not profits or power, but building things that last, creating something meaningful. Cole sees the business, Ava sees the legacy, that's why she's ready." I traced his handwriting with my finger, tears blurring my vision. He'd known. All along, he'd known I was the right choice. And he'd done everything he could to make sure I got what I'd earned. The real inheritance wasn't the company, wasn't the money or the title or the corner office. It was the lesson Dad had taught me. That strength comes in many forms, that being underestimated is sometimes an advantage, that quiet persistence outlasts loud aggression. Cole had tried to erase me, to rewrite history and steal what wasn't his, but in doing so, he'd forced me to become exactly who I needed to be. Someone who wouldn't back down, someone who understood that real power isn't taken through lies and manipulation. It's earned through integrity and courage. I closed Dad's journal and placed it carefully back in the drawer. Then I turned off the lights and locked the office, walking through the quiet building I now led. Outside, the city lights sparkled against the night sky. Somewhere out there, Cole was probably still bitter, still convinced he'd been wronged. My mother was probably still justifying her choices, telling herself she'd done what was necessary. But I wasn't angry anymore, wasn't hurt. I'd learned the most important lesson of all. The people who truly matter will see your worth, will trust you even when others doubt, will leave you the tools you need to succeed, even if they can't be there to see you use them. Dad had done that for me, and I'd honored his trust by becoming someone worthy of it, not despite being the quiet one, because of it. I drove home that night thinking about legacy, about what we leave behind when we're gone. Dad hadn't just left me a company. He'd left me proof that he believed in me, that he saw something in me others had missed, and that belief had transformed me into someone capable of protecting his life's work. The boardroom where Cole had tried to erase me felt like a lifetime ago. That scared, shocked girl who'd watched her brother steal everything. She'd become someone Dad would have been proud of. Someone who understood that revenge doesn't have to be loud or cruel. Sometimes it's just standing tall in the ruins of what they tried to destroy you with. Sometimes it's succeeding quietly while they implode loudly. Sometimes it's proving, through action rather than words, that you were always exactly who you were meant to be. I pulled into my driveway and sat for a moment in the darkness, Dad's words echoing in my memory. "Don't let anyone push you out of what's yours." I hadn't, and I never would again. Because the real inheritance, I'd finally understood, wasn't shares or titles or corner offices. It was the strength to stand up for what's right, the courage to fight for what you've earned, the wisdom to know that sometimes the quiet ones are the most dangerous, not because they're cruel or vengeful, because they're patient, strategic, unshakable. And when they finally decide to fight back, they do it with evidence, integrity, and a precision that can't be argued with or talked around. Cole had underestimated me. They all had. That was their mistake. And by the time they realized what I was capable of, it was too late. The company was mine. The truth was documented. The legacy was protected. I got out of my car and walked to my front door, thinking about tomorrow's meeting with potential new clients. About the sustainable building project we were launching. About the scholarship program I was starting in Dad's name for young women interested in construction and engineering. About all the ways I'd continue building on what he'd started. Not just surviving, thriving, growing, creating something that would last long after I was gone, just like he'd taught me. And as I unlocked my door and stepped inside, I smiled, because I'd finally learned the truth Dad had always known. Being underestimated isn't a weakness. It's a gift. It means no one sees you coming until you've already won. The quiet ones, the overlooked ones, the ones people dismiss as better suited for supporting roles, we're the ones who change everything. We just do it so quietly that by the time anyone notices, it's already done. And there's nothing they can do to stop it. That was Dad's final gift to me, not just ownership of a company, but the knowledge that I'd always been strong enough, smart enough, capable enough. I just needed the chance to prove it. Cole had tried to take that chance away. Instead, he'd given me the greatest opportunity of my life, the chance to become exactly who I was always meant to be, and I'd seized it with both hands and never let go. The real inheritance, I thought as I made tea in my quiet kitchen, isn't what you're given. It's what you refuse to let anyone take away. And that's something no forged document or stolen signature can ever touch. It lives inside you, unchangeable, unshakable, mine, forever.